it's a sensitive issue, but I feel with all sincerity that he does deserve great amount of honor and credit for not only going to World War II as a volunteer, but the attitude and the spirit in which he volunteered. That provokes me to think that he does deserve credit not only from the family but others that revere the men that fought for our freedom.
Tell me his story. What happened to him?
Well, as I recall, and I think I recall accurately, he volunteered as a young man, I believe 19 or 18. And at that time, he was extremely healthy. The doctors certified that he was the healthiest person that they had ever examined. Of course, you hear those kind of stories. But I think it was true. He didn't have a rotten tooth in his head, and was vigorous and strong and healthy, and volunteered for the right reason. The reason being that he loved his family, loved his country. So, then of course, by and by he went through boot camp, then he went into combat. And he loved the Marine Corps, and he's told me so, because he loved his buddies, and they loved him. And you don't have to guess at that, because he really did. And then of course he had some real experiences. Takes hours to tell all of his experiences, but just briefly, he went into combat, and one time he got his shot through the knee while in combat, and he recovered because he was so healthy. Then of course, later on, the real final test was when he went to Iwo Jima. That was one of the ugliest battles in history. And he was on Iwo Jima fighting for his country. And lo and behold, he got a bullet right behind, a 30 caliber bullet right behind his right ear, and it went diagonally across his head. They say, the medics say, that if he'd gone a quarter or half inch either way, it would have killed him instantly. But it just went through that little spot. That was a miracle. And it came out over here. Then, of course, he had to stop the blood. He realized he'd been shot, but he was still conscious for some reason. Most people would have gone out, but he was so vigorously healthy. And then, of course, the medics tried to pick him up at the beachhead. The way I remember the story. And one of the men said, "Let's leave him," because he implied he was going to die anyway. And the other fellow happened to know him slightly enough to say, "We're going to take him." So they put him on the stretcher, put him on the hospital ship, and then the story goes on whether he wrote to us, somebody wrote to us and told us about his injury. That he was very, very lucky. I didn't know what that meant, but I figured it was very serious. So by and by he went to, he was discharged from disability, Purple Heart and so forth. And then he went to New Orleans, discharged there, and he started hitchhiking, which was the custom in those days for people without money to thumb. We call it thumbing or hitchhiking. He wasn't embarrassed to do that. He just, like we were reared during the Depression. So he got to Orange, which was only 25 miles from where his destination with his family here, where we are right now. And when he got it, when some worker, I won't mention his name first, but a worker in the shipyard decided to pick him up because he was looked like a lonely soldier. And he didn't know. He said, I don't normally pick up hitchhikers, but I'm going to pick this guy up. But the strange oddity that happened was that this was his brother, the middle brother, the one between us, and Grover by name. And Grover and Teeny was more or less timid, and he wasn't too outgoing. But he did say to Grover, Grover, you don't know me, do you? His own blood brother. Of course, that was a shock and a surprise, and a pleasant surprise in a way. So they came on over, and then the story goes on, unwinds, and he began to heal, got married, and had children. So that is just the gist of it, real quickly said, but there's so much more to it. But those are the things, and the most touching thing about Teeny was his casual, heartfelt comment about going to service. He says, I wanted to go so my brother wouldn't have to go. Now, he didn't realize that we would have to take our turn even, that we were drafted. But that was his spirit. That was his feelings. So all of that adds up to what I said in the first place, that he deserves credit that we could never amply repay him.
Do you think of him as a hero?
Definitely. Never think of him, but what I don't think of is kind words that he said. And he still feels that way. It hasn't altered. He's gone through suffering since, sickness, family illness, children, and in all kinds of adversity and trials and tribulations, not only in the combat.
Do you
But
think he's in his toughest battle now?
Beg pardon?
Do you think he's in his toughest battle now, having to fight?
Well, his Parkinson, which is, fortunately in Parkinson you do retain your faculties. And I'm so thankful for that. Internally, I'm thankful that he can rationalize and talk to you. And he's not verbal as the average, so to speak, but he knows what's going on.